Okay, welcome everybody. Garrett Sussman here, the head of content at Grade Us. Welcome to the office hours. I hope everything is going well on your end. Everybody, if you want to chime in and say hi, it looks like we have a nice little crew here today, and I'm really excited. I am joined today by Carson Cole, who's our lead engineer on the API, which we're going to be going over today. Say hi to everyone, Carson.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Afshan, who I know a bunch of you have worked with. She's one of our lead customer support specialists. Whether you've been on the phone with her or seen her via the email or via chat, Afshan has been with us. She's one of the longest tenured customer support reps with Grade Us, knows the platform in and out, and she is the point contact for the API as well. Say hi to everyone, Afshan.
Hi, everyone. I actually have a face.
Basically, the main thing that we are going to highlight is our new API version that Carson's going to kind of talk through. Now, we're going to talk about it both from a high level in terms of for any of you who are looking to automate using Grade Us. So connecting it to our system, and then whether you're doing it as a reseller and kind of completely white labeling as your own review management platform, or you're just doing this to onboard your clients. So, if you're not necessarily doing it as a self-service, but just want to make the process that much quicker, you have a team that's able to build out, the software within your own existing platform, and you're using. We're going to kind of talk through what we've added there. So just to start diving into the Grade Us API, what we have is, Carson, we're going to talk through these endpoints that we've added. What did we already have? What's new? If you can kind of explain and maybe go from users all the way through links, how this is going to work for our agency and partner customers.
Sure. Just a little background. This is the API, and we call it version 4. It's currently in beta, which means that we've released it. It is working today, and customers are free to use it, but there can be the possibility that we still make changes to these endpoints. However, by and large, these are standard resources and they're not likely to change substantially. And because it's a RESTful design, meaning we're following standardized practices of a RESTful interface, get, post, update, delete, request methods, it's that really there's not going to be a lot of change. So you're free to use it, and there's not a substantial risk that anything you do would be broken, based on some change going forward. Most of our changes going forward will be new resources, additional capabilities, and so forth. But yes, as Garrett said, this is what you're seeing are all of the current profiles, the resources that are available, and the design has been around giving agencies and any user of Grade Us the ability to manage their business on Grade Us primarily through the API. So our prior API versions were selective. There were certain things, for example, in V2, there's a very good recipient endpoint, so it's very good for just adding recipients. V1 has a few other endpoints, and you would kind of use this and that, and as well as use the API. But our design has been around, A to Z access of Grade Us without having to use the UI to any large degree. So that is the overall approach. It is called a V4. Someone might notice that where's V3. We actually have customized endpoints on V3 that are used for other purposes, and that's the only reason why we do call this V4. But again, if you're already using it, you can start looking at these new endpoints. There's no rush. We will eventually deprecate the prior versions, but there's no plan right now for that to happen, so you're just fine. But definitely start looking, you should definitely start looking at these endpoints and figuring out how you might implement them in the future and take advantage of what you can do.
Awesome. And I think it, to your point, Carson, it's a very like safe, kind of straightforward program, and it's going to allow our customers who aren't already using the system to really take advantage of all of these key components in terms of submitting information or pulling the information. Let's talk about some of these endpoints. So when we're talking about the actual users, say you're a reseller, saying you're an agency and you have a client, how are they going to use the user endpoint from the API and use it potentially for their own business?
Well, the fundamental setup on Grade Us is we have a master user, okay? And you will still need to go in and establish your account. And when you do that, you're basically creating your master user account. The API then gives you access with that user account, and with the API key you get on that master user. You can then create sub-users, which for an agency would be the underlying businesses that you're supporting and giving them direct access to,
Can I
one or
jump in really quick?
more profiles.
Just
Absolutely.
remember to email support to get your API key.
Right, exactly. And we're gonna talk a little bit about like this where to get the documentation as
Yeah.
well as start that access in the first place. That's a great point,
Okay.
John.
Cool.
Yeah. So users are basically the foundation of anything you do. Starting with your own access. With that user account, you'll have the key, as Afshan mentioned, to get into the API, and then you can actually see who your users are, and you can actually, if you might have a usage to check and see how often they're using the service or whatever. You can see all this data by pinging the API and asking about your users, creating your users, updating your users, and the like.
That's really cool about finding out how often they're using it. I think that could be really valuable for larger businesses to, just kind of automate that check-in and make sure, like, if someone hasn't been using it for a while, maybe you have your agency support team or reseller support team reach out to them to, have them log back in and start using the system, because that's ultimately going to be how you retain clients. Um, in terms of permissions, would they do that through the API, or if they want to update that, they still would go into the system?
You can do everything through the API in terms of granting access. So you can have a group of users scoped under a brand in a domain. And you can scope them within certain features in Grade Us. So if you only want to have them access certain things, you can grant that specific access. So it's completely customizable for everything a user might want to do on Grade Us.
That's awesome. Okay, so profiles. So obviously it's pretty clear we have this get profiles, update profiles, create them, delete them, and then the email component. What does that mean in terms of setting that up to automate onboarding a new customer or a new client? What components of the profiles are we talking about? How would that typically work?
So profiles, or we can call them locations or businesses, they represent a location that on the web might have reviews. Okay, so a profile is the core component of what starts the review collection process. So you obviously have to create a profile. Now it's maybe if you're McDonald's, it would be one McDonald's location. If you're a law firm, it might be one lawyer. With the profile, you'll create this profile. You'll give it a title and basic descriptive information. You have to enable certain capabilities that you might want to do with this profile. So if you are going to have campaigns to request customers to leave a review, for example, then you might send them emails or SMSs. That's what the create email is, and create phone. You'll do that one time at the beginning, and then your profile's ready to go. With the profile, you'll then do everything else on the right-hand side there as it pertains to reviews and recipients and links. So everything is connected by and large with a profile.
Perfect. So let's go through those reviews, recipients, links, pretty straightforward, but at what point in the review management process are they activated? How would they be used on a per client basis?
Okay, so probably if we were to look at these three items, reviews, recipients, links, we actually would turn them upside down and we would start with a link. So you have your profile, and the next thing you want to do is you want to collect your Google reviews. You will create a link and you will send in a URL or a place ID of your Google reviews where they're found on the web. And as soon as we get that, we'll go to work and start collecting reviews. That's where the reviews come in, and that we have one endpoint for reviews, and that's where you can actually ping the API and say, give me my reviews. If we have some, we'll give them to you, or they may be still forthcoming. We check them daily, every 24 hours at least, and you can continuously ping to get those reviews if you'd like. But again, and then you can create as many links as you want on a profile. I mean, well, up to the number of sites that we can actually scrape, and that's upwards of 200. You'll submit a link for each one of those. So links are the initial building blocks of review collection. Once we have that link, we'll actually go to work, collect reviews. And then the last point is recipients. We then want to encourage people to leave reviews, and that's where the whole recipient process is. And that endpoint, once you're all set up collecting reviews, recipients is probably going to be the single endpoint you will use continuously, because you'll want to keep transmitting recipients to us to say, hey, send this person an SMS and or a phone, a email requesting them to leave a review. And your POS system or your application, or whatever data source you have collecting those recipients, can be sending a transmission to us saying, here's a recipient, here's a recipient, here's a recipient. Please go ask them for a review, and we'll start a campaign to say, hey, come on, leave a review.
I think that actually comes up the most when it comes to customers who want to automate the Grade Us system, which is like, all of the other components are the initial setup for a new client, which is exciting. But to your point, it's like a one-time deal with a lot of it. With the recipients, it's like once you connect that to your point of sale system, it could be a CRM. I know a lot of folks who use like QuickBooks. If you have a new customer and they've, you could probably connect it to the endpoint on QuickBooks of their API of when they've paid their invoice, for instance. Then you would send out the email for the review request, because we know with review management, the timing of that review request is going to be essential. So being able to automate this whole process through the recipients and the emails and the SMS is really going to increase your value of using Grade Us for review generation, right?
Do you mind if I jump in really quick?
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to, from a customer success standpoint, we always encourage, before you send these review requests out, like log into the UI, customize your templates, make them as personal as possible. So we do have obviously our default email and text templates, but the more personal you can make those, the better. So, I mean, again, you only have to do that once per profile, but I just wanted to kind of jump in and say, make sure you're customizing things before you.
That's great. And while you're here, actually, Ashton, so you look at a ton of different profiles across all these different customers. From your personal experience, do you have any other recommendations of what works? I know I've heard anecdotally that keeping things short and sweet, you don't want to write too much in your templated email is really effective. Are there any other kind of insights you've seen that customers that have worked really well?
I would definitely say what you said, short and sweet, but you definitely want to just personalize the ask as much as possible. Like, say why it's important to you, say how helpful it is to your business for them to leave a review. We do recommend generally, as far as like the landing page goes, to only include like 3 or 4 options for review sites, because more than that we find is a little bit overwhelming for people. We always recommend doing, just a couple that you don't have to have like a login for. So like doing like Google and Facebook always are popular, because I mean, I feel like 99% of people have one of those. But you just want to be aware of like where you're sending people. Is there a login? Do they have to create an account? I don't know. Those are the main things, I think. Short and sweet, personalize it, tell them why it's important to you and your business, and just make sure that your landing page is clean and easy to, link out to something.
I think that's a great point too, is like you've kind of highlighted it with the login situation where it's really about reducing any type of
Clicks.
friction from leaving the review, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. So Carson, in terms of like using the API, you and the team have built out this really nice documentation that has all the access of getting started, to Afshan's part about the obtaining the API keys, what our rate limits might be. So looking at this document, and I'll open this up on another page. Can you guys see that okay? The introduction?
Yeah, looks good.
Everyone sees. Okay. So Carson, what type of information do people need to know when it comes to using the API documentation?
The documentation is fairly straightforward, and if you click on the getting started, this has the basic components of what you need to get going. And what I always try to do with people is you trying to help them overcome their fear of actually using an API, because it's actually not that complicated, and we've gone out of our way to really keep it as simple as possible. And
I've used this documentation, and if I can use it, anybody can use it. So.
And actually, Afshan's correct. That was a test, because we did go to her and said, okay, can you do this, and can you do this yourself? And we actually encourage her and others to try it themselves and to see how easy it is. Of course, you may still need a developer and so forth to go and implement it into your system, but having the power and the knowledge to understand how you can do it on your own computer is definitely very powerful. So, under the getting started, we've got the base URL, getting your keys. As Afshan said, you contact support, you can get your key, or there's no rate limits. A lot of companies do have rate limits, and we currently do not have rate limits, and that may change in the future. Pagination is just related to when you ask for something from the API, and we have tons of data. If you have a location, for example, that has 10,000 reviews, we wouldn't return you 10,000 in one request. We would actually return you 200 or so, and at the bottom of the response, we would tell you how many pieces of data there are, how many pages there are, and literally for your second request, you would actually tell us, give me page 2, give me page 3, and you could actually paginate through, get all those results. You may not want all 10,000. You ask for them once, and actually you only want today's pages of results. You'll just want the most recent. You don't want to keep requesting the number 10,000, which you got a week ago. So that's why pagination is also helpful. Authentication is very simple. When you make a request, in the request, you actually have your API key, and we explain here how what it's actually called. There's a authorization header, and you literally just put your key into the header. And I'll run through a quick example how easy this is. Error handling, we have customized errors, and what's important here is that as you're using the API, you will get a response that may say, hey, you've made a mistake, or your API key doesn't work. And if you actually scroll up a little bit there, Garrett, so we can see some of these errors. Sorry, scroll down. So we can see actual error codes. So there'll actually be a number. So it's important that when you communicate with Afshan, that you actually say, I got this code, and hopefully you don't get 1004 where it just says something went wrong. But it's a little more detailed than that. But if you are missing your key, or if you don't have access to a resource, we'll actually give you a very specific error that will tell you that is the case, and hopefully that'll preclude you from having to contact Afshan, and you can figure it out yourself. So again, very, very important to have those custom error codes.
And then just like all the endpoints are there, right?
And the endpoints. So it's pretty straightforward. I can do a quick little demo and show what it takes to actually access the API.
Yeah, let's do that. So now I'm going to hand the presentation over to Carson, and he can share his screen and kind of show what it might look like behind the scenes. And before you do that, actually, Carson, we don't necessarily recommend actual API developers. We don't refer customers to them. However, if someone does not currently have an API developer, what should a business look for in them? Is there anything specifically they should know when they're trying to find someone who can work with like the Great Us API?
Very simple. You want to ask for a developer that knows how to work with JSON RESTful APIs. I mean, the RESTful part is the most important. If they don't know what that means, RESTful,
Then you have the wrong person.
REST is the acronym. REST is, I couldn't tell you what that stands for. You look it up on Wikipedia, it'll tell you. And RESTful it just means that it's RESTful. And if they don't know what that means, then you don't want them. But it doesn't matter what language. RESTful is totally, it's ambivalent to what the language is. They need to know how to work with an API, and then of course know how to work with your own system. So
yeah. Cool. Okay. Take it away and show us what this looks like with your UI.
So I'm gonna very simply, my goal here is just to show what how someone would access the API. Some of you may be experts already, so this is useless. But very importantly, on the left-hand side of the documentation, there's a thing called schema. Okay, and if you click on that, you'll see this open API schema. And this is actually a pretty nifty little tool we have here. What this is a standard way to show you with a map exactly what is in our API. And you don't have to read this, it's very complicated, and you can kind of scroll down and you might get some clues and it'll be helpful. Most important, if you can actually take this schema and you can actually import it into pretty much any standard API client application. A common one is called Postman. You can download a free copy of that, and I'll just show you how it works. I would click download, I'd put it on my computer, and literally
super easy to use.
I would
really Postman's really easy to use.
Yep. I'll show you how simple this is. Okay, I'm booting up Postman. Postman is just a program on my computer. I have nothing in Postman right now. Okay, totally empty. I downloaded that file to my computer. I will go in here. I will import. If I can figure out where that is. I'm going to choose that file. And I'm going to simply import it in, and bango, left-hand side, you'll see this whole description of the API. And you see the whole schema that we just saw on the web page has been loaded in. Now I can look at my menu on the left-hand side. It shows me what I have access to. So here's users, and for example, let's say we want to get users. Okay. And again, these on the left-hand side, these all match exactly what the endpoints are on the API documentation. Now, we talked about authorization. So I'll click on the authorization here, and you'll see I've got no authorization in here. What is the type? I want a bearer token authorization. And you're going to paste in your API token right here. And I'm done with the authorization. I don't do anything else. Now I'm back to my get users. All we're going to do is make a get call to users, so we send it. Sending. And there's my response. So I just interacted with Great Us, and there is the response. It's listing the user, johndoe@example.com. If you go back over to the endpoints on here, look at the exact same thing, get users. You can see, oops, let me get this new request here. You'll see the exact same response within the documentation. So you don't have to use Postman, you can actually see what it should look like on the endpoint. What else would we like to get? We can get some profiles. Let's see what our profiles are. Again, all I do is I send in the request. Oops, it says I'm missing my token. This is the error message I was talking about. And you'll see it says error code 1001. Oh, but it actually tells me what I'm missing. Oh, I'm missing my token. I must have forgotten to do my authorization. Go in, oh, there's no authorization. Let me add it here. Error token, there's my token. Let's send it again. Bango, there is the profile. And that's it. It is that simple.
That's awesome. I really appreciate it. I think this is really useful for anyone who's looking to, scale. I think that's one of the major appealing things of having this comprehensive API, why we invested in it, is so that, our customers, because we do have a lot of agency customers who start out with a couple of clients, 2, 3, 4, and they start thinking to themselves, okay, review management, that's something that's really important for businesses. That's important to your visibility, to local search. I'm going to offer it if they're already offering like SEO services. And so once you realize that review management and reputation has a huge impact for businesses, it's like a foot in the door for your other services as well. So you could scale this really quickly because everybody needs reviews. And so all of a sudden, once you start generating a ton of clients, or we do have bulk import sort of features within the UI, but if you're starting to bring on 50 location, 100 location types of customers, this API is going to simplify that process. Afshan, I see you nodding your head. What are you thinking there?
Only because I know some of our clients who do use it for that purpose. So just even if you're just creating 50 profiles, right? This is if you already know the platform, you know how tedious it is to go in and put in the profile name and blah blah blah, but this is gonna it'll cut your time in a 1/10 of the time. I think it's so intuitive and so fast that you can do your links now. You can create the profile, you can add your review links. The basic setup is going to be super fast. So
exactly. And this is not even the type of thing, as we kind of highlighted, because a lot of this is set it and let it go. It's like you can have just a freelance API developer on call who, once they know the system, can very easily just come back and set up a new client when you have to do that. So it's not like you need a full-time developer on your staff necessarily to accomplish this.
And to Carson's point earlier, and to what I said, if I can use this, I'm the only technical experience or background I have is from working here. So I don't have some crazy technical background or anything. And I just followed, Carson's documentation and was able to create a user and was able to create a profile. And so if I can do it, I wouldn't even, if you're using it just in that basic way of creating profiles and adding recipients, it's so easy to use that I don't even think you would really need a developer if you're just using it for those endpoints and you're not connecting it to other things. So that's
That's awesome. I mean, you guys did a great job kind of explaining this. If anybody in the webinar does have any questions, feel free to drop them now for Afshan or Carson. That said, if you don't, or if you think of one later after the fact, please don't hesitate to email questions to support@grade.us, and then to get it to Afshan so she can get right back to you, just put attention Afshan either in the subject line, or would that be better, Afshan, in the subject line? Or
on the subject line would be good, because then whoever sees it will just pass it to me. So
awesome. Yeah, so any questions? We don't offer a ton of support when it comes to API other than errors on our end. Is that correct, Afshan?
Yeah.
Anything else in terms of
we just don't have the bandwidth to offer support on implementation of it, and all that kind of has to be handled by you. So if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then you would have to kind of get your own developer to do it, because we don't have the bandwidth to kind of help with implementation. But if there's errors, or if there's questions about what the API can do, we're happy to help in that sense.
Exactly. And so just a reminder, this is available to our agency and partner plans. To get API access, to get your token, they would have to email you in the first place, correct, Afshan?
Yeah, it's something we have to kind of churn a switch on to get the token. So just email us for the token, and then you'll be able to access it through your account.
Sounds good. And one last thing to point out is, if you do not want to go the route of the API, but you do want to automate kind of email recipients for Grade Us, our other solution is we do have a Zapier connection in beta. that is something else that you would email support@grade.us and ask for access to the Zapier beta. It does cost money to use Zapier. However, that would allow you to do a little more automation without having to touch any type of code. It's just the Zapier integration isn't as fleshed out as our full API with all the endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Tim says his customer uses Agemni CRM, AGEMNI. Tim, I'm assuming your question revolves around whether that would connect to our API. And to that, Carson, correct me if I'm wrong. Any CRM that has its own API endpoints would be able to connect?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's that. Yeah, I don't think they have any dedicated. I don't know anything about them, but no one would normally have a dedicated connection. You have to bridge that with some code. So an application running your side that submits it, or there has to be some kind of integration they've built in. Yeah, that bridge connection is something that you'd have to kind of figure out how to do. And that could be a small little application written on the side that's kind of like sending information back and forth. You can do it that way.
Okay, great. And so Tim says that the CRM that his customer uses has an API. So what should Tim look for if you went to or if anybody was looking at their CRM, what type of documentation should they search for to see, tell their developer how to set it up? Is there,
Well, it depends on what they want to do. If customers are going into their CRM and they want to trigger things to happen on Grade Us, like creating a recipient and sending out that request, then what the developer would do is the developer would utilize the CRM API to get that information, and then they would turn around and transmit that information to Grade Us. So again, it would be a little program in the middle that would pull the stuff out of the other API and then transmit it to the Grade Us API. They'd be working both APIs, but they would need something in the middle.
Similar, are you familiar with any programs that would be in the middle that people could look into in terms of connecting two different APIs?
I don't know. There may be. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, that's probably something, Tim, that you would look into is talk to your API developer and find if they have a program that could basically make the two APIs talk, and that would be able to accomplish hopefully what you need. Yeah, no problem. So I think we're all set. That's all the questions that we have for the API. I want to thank Carson and Afshan for hanging out. Guys, if you want to stay the rest of the office hours or if you have to get back to it, I know both of you are very busy.
I have clients.
There you go. She's got people to talk to. Places.
I got people.
No, but thank you so much, both of you. We really appreciate it.